All right, so today we're going to talk about something really weird our brains do. A mental quirk that makes you think everything you own is way more valuable than it actually is. We're talking about everything from your car to a random coffee mug. It's called the endowment effect, and honestly, understanding it might just change how you look at, well, everything you own.
So let's dive right in with a situation I'm pretty sure we've all been in at some point.
You know that feeling, right? You decide to sell something. Maybe an old guitar, a piece of furniture you don't use anymore, or even some concert tickets. You put it up for sale, and the offers that come in just feel low, like almost insulting. And you're thinking, what is wrong with these people? Don't they see how great this is? Well, guess what? You're not just being difficult or greedy.
And this right here, this is the heart of the problem. On one side, you've got your price, which is all wrapped up in memories and personal attachment. And on the other side, you have their price, which is just a cold, hard number based on what the market says. And that gap, that huge difference in price, it's not random. It's a super predictable quirk of our psychology.
And of course, there's a name for this whole thing. It's a well-known cognitive bias called the endowment effect, first officially named way back in 1980 by the economist Richard Thaler.
So, what does that actually mean? It's pretty simple, really. The mere act of owning something makes you think it's worth more. That's it. It doesn't matter if you got it 5 seconds ago or if it has zero sentimental value. Literally, the act of possession changes its value inside your head.
Okay, but how do we know this is a real thing and not just a feeling? Well, that brings us to maybe one of the most classic, most famous experiments in all of behavioral economics, the coffee mug test.
The setup was just brilliant in its simplicity. So here's what the researchers did. They got a bunch of university students and split them into two groups. They gave one group, the sellers, a free university coffee mug. It was theirs to keep. The other group, the buyers, got nothing. Then they went to the sellers and asked, what's the lowest price you'd accept for your mug? And they asked the buyers, what's the highest price you'd be willing to pay for one?
And the results? Whoa, they were absolutely wild. The buyers, on average, were willing to pay a little under $3. But the sellers? The people who had owned that exact same mug for just a few minutes, they demanded over $7 to part with it. Just because they owned the mug, its value more than doubled in their minds. That's insane.
And I know what you might be thinking. Big deal, it's a coffee mug, who cares? But this isn't just about cheap stuff. This effect pops up with all kinds of things, and sometimes the gap between what a buyer's willing to pay and what a seller demands is just staggering.
Check this out. Another study found that people who own tickets to the NCAA Final Four basketball tournament valued them, get this, 14 times higher than potential buyers did. 14! That is a massive difference, and it's all driven by the simple fact of ownership.
Okay, so we've seen what happens. The evidence is pretty clear. But the real question is, why? What is going on in our brains that makes owning something so powerful?
Well, the main reason has to do with a foundational idea in behavioral economics called prospect theory. And a huge part of that theory is something called loss aversion. Basically, it boils down to this. Losing something hurts about twice as much as gaining that same exact thing feels good. And you can see it perfectly in this classic graph. See how starting from that middle point, the line for losses drops way faster than the line for gains goes up? That's what we're talking about. It means losing $20 feels way worse than the pleasure you get from finding $20. Our brains are just fundamentally wired to hate losing. So think about it from the seller's point of view. When you're selling your mug, you're not just thinking about the $7 you're about to get. You're focused on the fact that you are losing your mug. And because our brains hate losing, you demand a higher price to make up for that pain. But the buyer, they have nothing to lose. For them, it's all about a potential gain. It's a completely different mental game. So, loss aversion is a huge piece of the puzzle, for sure. But some researchers think there's something else going on, something a little deeper and more personal. This idea is called psychological ownership, and it's the theory that our stuff, it actually becomes part of us, part of our identity. Think about that old college t-shirt. It's not just a piece of cotton, is it? It's a symbol of who you were, the experiences you had, your connection to that time and place. So getting rid of it feels weirdly personal, like you're giving up a tiny piece of your own story. All right, so as you can probably guess, anytime a powerful psychological bias like this gets discovered, you can bet that businesses and marketers are going to figure out how to use it against us.
The free trial is the absolute classic example. It's not just a test drive. Here's how it works. First, they let you use a service for free. Over that month, you integrate it into your life. You start to feel like it's yours. Then, the trial ends, and the thought of losing access, well, that loss aversion kicks in. It actually feels painful. And boom, you're suddenly way more likely to pull out your credit card just to avoid that feeling of loss.
And you see this everywhere. You know when a furniture app lets you use your phone's camera to see what a new sofa would look like in your living room? That's not just a cool feature. It's building that sense of ownership before you've even bought it. Same with those free and easy returns policies. Companies know that once that thing is physically in your house, the endowment effect kicks in hard, and you're much, much less likely to go through the hassle of sending it back.
So, knowing all this, are we just doomed to overvalue our junk and fall for these marketing tricks forever? Well, not really. Because the best weapon against a brain trick like this is just being aware that it's happening.
Now, I should say, to be fair, there are some economists who think this whole effect is a little overblown. They argue that maybe the way these experiments are designed creates an artificial situation that causes the results. But let's be honest, for most of us, that feeling of my stuff is just worth more is definitely real.
So what's a big takeaway here? How can you actually fight back against your own brain? It all comes down to one simple mental trick. When you're trying to decide whether to sell something or get rid of it, don't ask yourself, how much is this worth to me? Instead, you have to force yourself to ask a different question. If I didn't already own this, how much would I be willing to pay to get it today? That little switch in perspective can break the emotional attachment and show you what the item is actually worth.
And that, in a nutshell, is the endowment effect. Once you know what it is, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere, from the clutter you can't seem to part with to the subscriptions you keep paying for. So the real question is, now that you know the trick, where are you going to spot it in your own life?